Secretary Jagan Mohan, and it is always a pleasure to introduce our own Annette. Having known him since childhood, very fondly calling him as Kuti Papa. Shyam Krishnakumar did his schooling in Bharati Vidya Bhavan and his graduation in Amrita Institute of Technology. And having worked for a short while in IT, he further his master's in Jain University in research. Shyam Krishnakumar is a technology consultant and researcher who is working on emerging technologies in the Indian context. He has worked with consultants on technology policy for corporates and non-profit. He is associated with Center for Study of Law and Governance at Jawaharlal Nehru University, where he works key regulatory issues that arise from algorithmic decision making. Shyam runs in the tech. Oh, sorry. Shyam is the Dispatch, a fortnightly mailer on emerging technologies, society, culture, and us. Over to you, Shyam.
Thank you. It's always an honor to come back and talk at Rotary Club Central. I've had the opportunity to attend. It's an honor to be on the other side and be delivering a talk this time. Let me just share my screen. Can everybody see my screen? This is visible, right? Okay, great. So this is me as Kamlesh sir introduced. I work on technology and public policy. I did my bachelor's in computer science, ran my own edtech startup for about 3 years, went to Delhi to work with in public policy with a think tank named Vision India Foundation. Now I consult for corporates and think tanks on technology policy. I help organizations understand technology transformation and train executives to stay ahead. That's broadly what I do. The Intech Dispatch is a small initiative that I run. It's a fortnightly newsletter on emerging tech transformations happening in the Indian context. So this is something that is moving very rapidly and it's hard for many of us to keep track of on a daily basis. So this is a fortnightly roundup to keep everybody on top of what is really shifting in the Indian technological scenario. I'll share the link for this a little while later. But on to what I do. So this is the obscure word that I use when I talk about what work I do, technology policy. So a lot of people think that I'm throwing jargon or, okay, it's technology policy, what is this? My hope in this talk is to convince you that tech trends and technology policy are actually a necessity for us to engage with today in our own businesses and in our own personal lives as well. So the way I thought of doing this talk is to actually do it in 3 different parts. The first part is, of course, how rapidly the world is changing around us. This is causing a change in markets in significant ways and how all of us have to adapt, right? I think as our president very clearly said in the beginning, a lot of this was still a few years away when we were talking before COVID. But in the last 6 months, the acceleration is almost impossible, not only in our everyday lives, but even in the way the markets are moving. Right? So I think this is a very timely conversation to be having at this point of time as well. Right? So what is so special about technology now?
Charu, thank you.
So what is so special about technology now, right? We've always had technology over the last few hundred years, maybe even a few thousand years. But what is different right now is that if we look at this graph, the steam engine comes in the 1800s, and then there is a gap of around 40 years before the next major disruption of railways comes in. And there is a comfortable gap of almost 60 years before the telephone comes in, right? Then a few things like automobiles and electricity come in. There's still more gap, right? Before the computers and internet come in. So you're seeing one major technology and a large gap for society and economies to adjust before the next disruptive innovation comes in. But what we are seeing right now, if you look at 2020, is a convergence of multiple disruptive technologies. Each one of these by their own is a game changer of the scale of railways or of the scale of computers. But all of them are converging at this point of time right now, right? When we are looking at, for example, genomic sequencing, the Nobel Prize in chemistry went for the scientists who invented CRISPR. It is a gene editing technique to edit the human genome. We are still grappling with what genetically modified crops are and what our implications for our health is. But imagine having the power to edit the genome, and that is now in our hands as far as science is concerned. Or imagine the kind of battery storage and sustainable energy transformations that are happening at this point of time, right? We can power things that we never thought could be possible even 3 or 4 years ago. Artificial intelligence, we've seen this all across the news, robotics, multiple more technologies. All of these disruptive technologies are converging at this point of time in our lives. And this is just beginning, right? We are at the beginning of this transformation. Now, what is important is it would have just been a technologist story, right? If it's any other technology. But what is happening with disruptive technology is that they have social, economic, and political implications as well. Very simple thing that happens, right? If you look at mass production, when the automobile begins to start, right? For the first time, you actually have the ability to have a assembly line manufacturing come in with Ford and Model T being manufactured. Now, suddenly you have the idea of the factory, the idea of the shop floor, and people move from doing handicrafts where the person manufactures the entire product to becoming a worker who does one part of a supply chain. Now, this also centralizes labor into urban cities, right? A lot of production used to be rural based, but with mass production and assembly lines coming in, a lot of migration to urban cities happens. So the social architecture changes. Families which are joint, tight-knit communities which together produce handicrafts or art, right? Actually, many people begin to migrate to cities, and nuclear families become a reality because of mass production. Similarly, economic implications, right? Because if we see India's colonization, Industry 1.0, which is steam manufacturing, and the second transformation of assembly lines and mass production, impoverish the Indian economy, right? Our handicrafts industries are destroyed, our textile industries become destroyed. So there's a huge economic transformation that happens for us when there is a new technological disruption that came in. Socially, families have shifted, migration from rural to urban happened, and political changes also happen with both of these. Right? Colonialism would not have been possible, or England's colonization of the world would have not been possible had they not harnessed steam or harnessed the power of manufacturing. So a technology is not just a single transformation. It brings about a change in the social, economic, and political milieu. We saw that very clearly with computers and electronics. Right? We saw so many people from India migrating abroad. We saw the very nature of multiple industries shift. And we saw entire new industries spawn, which become significant contributors to India's export economy, the IT sector. Right? Now we are having what would be the fourth industrial revolution, where multiple converging technologies like these are coming together. What would be the social, economic, and political impacts is something which we yet have to see. The reason I'm bringing this to notice is because technology is now a question that concerns all of us. As engaged citizens, as people who care about our societies, or people who are involved in the market or in business of some sort, right? All of these become impacted by technology transformations at this point of time. So this is also a shift in the way we understand the world, right? At least in the 1700s, 1800s, everybody thought the world was like a watch, right? It's a perfectly organized mechanism. There is a great master plan. There are small screws and nuts and bolts, right? If something goes wrong, people know exactly how to fix it if you take it to a watchmaker, right? That's the way we understood the world. But then in the 1950s and 1960s, we realized the butterfly effect, right? The flapping of the wings of a butterfly in one corner of the world can lead to a transformation or a tsunami in the other corner of the world. This is the rise of complex systems. We saw that we cannot really understand the world the way we understand a watch. That very small changes in very small variables of the entire system can set off something like COVID-19, right? A wet market in China and somebody making a purchase there halts our lives in Coimbatore. This is not the watch model, right? It's not predictable. It's a complex system where we don't know how small changes can trigger off unexpected results, right? Similarly with technologies, imagine, for example, the power to edit a human genome. What all could it set off? We might not know the implications of what kind of transformations a single technological change could set off. So everything is viral today. COVID-19, obviously. Blue Whale was an unfortunate game which went viral, where children were asked to take up increasingly more difficult challenges, with the final challenge being a suicide. It became surprisingly viral across multiple countries, including India. Right? It's in a matter of 2 to 3 months. And if you have kids around your neighborhood, you would see that all of them are playing with their video games and shooting somebody on screens. PUBG, right? It's a huge craze. It's a game which came up a few months ago and a few 100 million installs. Everybody's on it, right? So right from a small app to a pandemic, everything is viral today because the world is not the world of a watch, but the world of a butterfly, of complex systems where small things become, excessively viral. Okay, so this is the world we were talking about till 2019. What has really changed at this point of time? The last 6 months have been a big disruption in our lives, personal lives, in our professional lives, right? There's also been a global disruption in many ways. What my reading is that it's 20 years accelerated in 5 months. A lot of predictions that people are making saying it'll come through 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line are actually living realities today. Right? Many things have accelerated significantly. Now, the rise of the new economy, as it is called, right? If we look at the market valuations of the top 5 tech giants, right? If we look at this, right, the market cap of the tech giants, you see that Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, Facebook, Alibaba, Tencent, between US and China, you have some of the most valuable companies in the world. If you leave out Saudi Arabia, state-owned corporation, right, which is practically the oil supply of the world, all of the most highly valued companies in the world are technology companies. Compare this to 2005, where we had a much wider distribution, right? A General Electric was here, a Citigroup was here, Walmart was here, right? Johnson and Johnson was here. This is the transformation that we have seen, and a lot of this market cap addition has happened in the last 5 months. Right? Apple hit 1 trillion and then jumped to the next trillion within 3 months. Right? Similarly with Amazon, Alphabet, and so on. Tesla, right, which manufactures a fraction of what a Toyota or a Volkswagen manufactures every year, right, is the most valuable automaker in the world at this point of time. Simply because they see Tesla to be a future bet and a leader in sustainable energy-based vehicles, right? Particularly in terms of battery technology. So another very telling thing, right? Just the way we are having this conversation on Zoom, and our flight tickets have not been booked in probably 6-7 months. That is showing across the stock performance as well, right? If you look at the valuation of Zoom vis-a-vis the valuation of the top 7 airlines worldwide, you are able to see that Zoom is worth far more than all of them at this point of time. This is not a trend that we would have expected in 2019 by any measure. You would have thought this is 8 years away, 10 years away, 12 years away. In 6 months, this has shifted. Again, since all of us are on these platforms, Zoom crosses a valuation of 100 billion. I don't know where they are today. This was some time ago when I checked. So we're talking of a rise from 16 billion to $100 billion, right? It's a simple app which allows all of us to put videos on and have a conversation. But the digital economy that has accelerated post-COVID has made this a necessity. And we see this in education also. It's not only in communication, it's not only in the airline sector, not only in automobiles, but even in something as fundamental as education, right? Byju's has been hogging advertisements in newspapers, on TV. Wherever we go, we see some ad or the other of Byju's or White Hat Junior telling us that programming is extremely important for your 5-year-old child, right? Shah Rukh Khan comes on TV advertising this. They are one of the fastest Indian companies to cross the 10 billion mark in valuation at this point of time, and huge market penetration accelerated by COVID-19. They are the fastest growing education startup in India and probably worldwide at this point of time, right? And they are actually integrating with schools, giving long-term subscription to parents, introducing software programming. Now, what was very strongly a brick and mortar enterprise where education was a physical system where you go to a school, and we never really had a school chain which could go all across India with 20,000, 40,000 schools. Now, Byju's has scaled up to a presence across India in a matter of 2 to 3 years, right? So we're seeing a big disruption in the tech sector, in the education sector as well. This was again something which we thought was 4 or 5 years down the line, right? It's actually accelerated. What's happening in Silicon Valley is also quite interesting from what I understand. The rents in San Francisco are dropping significantly, and we are seeing homes vacant for the first time available for people to buy. Right? It was one of the most expensive real estate locations in the world, but a lot of programmers and a lot of companies are leaving San Francisco because as companies get used to remote work, right, and if it becomes a new normal, especially so in the case of software companies, why should they be paying stratospheric rents to be in San Francisco? Silicon Valley is now going virtual. Now, what happens is, since companies have gotten comfortable with 90% or 80% of their workforce working from home, especially in the tech sector, we see this in the case of TCS also in India and Cognizant and all, right? We are seeing an unbundling of the firm. We are seeing people hire globally and not expect a H-1B migration to America. So you can actually have a Silicon Valley job with Silicon Valley salaries and work out of the comfort of Coimbatore. And these kind of jobs are already opening in the last 5-6 months. Right? So this is a personal inspiration of mine. I really like what Sridhar Vembu, the founder of Zoho, has been able to do. Zoho is a multi-billion-dollar Indian company, bootstrapped venture. He did not take venture capital. It supplies software, essential office suites, productivity suites like Microsoft Office products and Google Drive products for Fortune 500 companies. What they have managed to do is they are migrating back to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Zoho was headquartered in Chennai, right? But Sridhar Vembu is now saying that, we're anyway working virtually. Why do we need a centralized headquarters in a metropolis like Chennai? This is their office in Tenkasi, the new Zoho office. And they're opening offices across 4 or 5 other towns which have a population of less than 1.5 lakh. So this is fantastic, right? I mean, I can live in a pristine neighborhood. And let's say you have children. Children can actually have a wonderful, immersion in nature, good quality of life, and at the same time, you work and produce top-notch software which is exported across the world, right? And maybe you can walk to office in the dhoti the way Sridhar Vembu does, right? This would have been impossible for us to imagine even 3 years ago. COVID-19 has accelerated this. In fact, the last 9 months, he's been working out of Tenkasi and he's helped set up this office. 3 other offices have come up in different parts of Tamil Nadu. Multiple other companies like Kissflow is another company in Tamil Nadu are trying this model out. And TCS has very clearly not TCS, Cognizant has very clearly made a statement that, work from home will become a new normal. And they're actually shedding real estate to open multiple smaller centers of work. So I don't have to go to Bombay or to Delhi to work. There'll be a small setup in Tenkasi where I can go and plug into Cognizant's work or TCS's work or Zoho's work and experience the quality of life that a lot of metros do not give. Right? And coming from Delhi, I can vouch for this. Right? You really don't want to, mess with water and food and air. And coming from Coimbatore, right? If you could work for something in Silicon Valley from Coimbatore, why not? So this is the kind of transformation that I think that's been happening over the last 6 months, right? Much faster than we expected. This has led to a shift in markets as well, very fundamentally. So this is where the government also comes in. What is interesting is for a long time, technology was not regulated. It was a very, governments left it to their own devices. If you look at the internet, right? The first internet regulation in India comes in 2000 with the IT Act, and that is still pretty much a very loosely regulated sector. Similarly, in America, very loose regulation. Worldwide, everybody thought that let's leave technology alone, the technology sector alone, because that spurs innovation and enables people to iterate rapidly, and it creates fantastic things, right? It's given us everything from Google to something like Zoom, right? So people never really thought that technology ought to be regulated. But this is changing at this point of time in 2020, right? Governments are actively getting into the game. So we've seen that when we had a border conflict with China over the last 3 or 4 months, we saw about 200 Chinese apps being banned. We also saw that Chinese venture capital entering into Indian startups has now become, which now requires scrutiny from the government. It's not the automatic FDI route anymore, right? Similarly, governments worldwide are drawing borders. America and China are locked in a trade war. Most of the trade war at this point of time is technology driven. It is centered around access to 5G technologies, right? And US is cutting off China's access to semiconductor technology that the United States has, expelling Chinese students who are working on sensitive research and so on. Right? Similarly, the same thing is happening in India. Technology is very clearly becoming something that governments are playing in and governments are regulating very actively. Right? We've banned TikTok and PUBG. New data protection laws are coming in. There are 4 or 5 draft bills in the parliament at this point of time, each dealing with different facets of data, all of which could be passed before 2021 if our understanding is right. So what I'm trying to say with all of this is, so far it has just been, startups and technology companies driving technology. Now government is really getting into the game. Governments across the world, including the Indian government, are getting into the game. Right? So when we are saying we watch technology trends, we have to watch what the government is doing as much as we watch tech trends or what startups are doing or what companies are doing. Right? Just as much as we watch Apple or Tesla, we have to watch what passes in the parliament in India, which is why technology policy becomes extremely important. Okay, great. So what is the Indian government doing? Right? If you had asked this question in 2016, I would have confidently said nothing. But that is not the case at this point of time. They're really getting into the game in many, many ways. There's a lot of active regulation happening at this point of time, right from data protection to drones to National Digital Health Mission. Multiple projects around technology regulation is happening at this time. What is interesting is that the Indian government is not only regulating technology, the Indian government is building technology. It's one of the few governments worldwide to actually build technology. We saw that when COVID-19 broke out, the Indian government was one of the first to release a contact tracing app called Arogya Setu. Like the United States government did not do that. The UK government struggled for 3 to 4 months before they could actually launch a contact tracer and they failed. Right? Much of the European Union could not do this. The Indian government could do this within 25 days. Right? So the Indian government is one of the few governments that is actually actively building technology. So many of us in technology policy argue that from writing policy on paper or in law, policy is actually happening through code. Right? What allows, if let's say I'm boarding a flight to Delhi on Wednesday, what allows me into the flight? My Arogya Setu status. If I had to board a train in April or May or June when the train started, it was my Arogya Setu status that allowed me to get inside or not get inside. So it's actually an application or code that is actually regulating what the government wants to do. The government is using code to regulate. Right? Just the way we have software as a service, we have government as a service. What I'm fundamentally trying to say with all of this, when I say policy in code or when I say government as a service, is very simply just the way governments would build physical infrastructure like railways or roadways to enable transportation or to enable market access. The government is now building digital infrastructure. This is India's unique model. The Indian government is actively building digital infrastructure. Like what? The best example of this, of public digital infrastructure, is payments. Right? These were the ways in which we made payments 4 or 5 years ago. Cash payments, money orders, checks, drafts, right? I had to transfer a significant amount which could not be UPI'd. And then I realized how painful it is to actually add a beneficiary, wait for a whole day, and then make a transaction. It felt extremely slow because we have gotten used to apps like PhonePe, GPay, Beam, Paytm, which allow you to instantly transfer money. Right? It's mobile first, cashless, 24/7. Now we are talking about RTGS going 24/7. This is 24/7 from the beginning. Right? This was a revolution that the Indian government pioneered. Because all of this is based on the United Payments Interface, right? So what the Indian government did was it actually built a platform called the United Payments Interface and made it an open platform. So now about 43 banks have gotten on top of UPI. Multiple startups like PhonePe and Paytm have gotten on top of the UPI. And now you have a whole ecosystem of apps which allow you to transact money, right? Even if we go to our nearby small stores, like Kirana stores and other stores, we're able to make a transaction using our phone. Now I might have a GPay address, that guy might have a PhonePe, it will still transact. And it will be done in a second, right? All I have to do is scan a QR code, put the amount, and it's done, right? This is because the government built public digital infrastructure to enable all of these apps and banks to get on top of it and transact seamlessly. This architecture was launched only in 2016. And within 4 years, we see the kind of penetration even in a place like Coimbatore, even in the smallest of places, right? I see QR code stickers everywhere. This is the India Stack approach. This is what they've been trying to do. Very simply, they build highways for digital businesses to innovate and grow on. Now, this is not only in payments. This is happening in multiple other industries. Healthcare is a big disruption that is happening at this point of time. We would have seen, if you had watched the August 15th address of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he very clearly talked about the National Digital Health Mission and said that every citizen will have a health ID. Right? So what they are launching is actually the National Digital Health Mission, which is based on the Bharat Health Stack. What they're trying to do is they're creating a technology platform on which every citizen will be onboarded with a unique ID. Every hospital will be onboarded. Every pharmacy will be onboarded. The entire healthcare system, right from insurance to hospitals to pharmacies to citizens, will all be on one single platform. Just the way they got all the banks on a single platform for instant payments. Now, this is already happening at this point of time. They've built the technology for it. The technology is being trialed. We've got a chance to actually try playing with that platform, and they've done a good job with what they've done so far, right? And we can clearly see this in the kind of pouring investments, right? Two of the biggest players in the Indian technology sector entered the e-pharmacy market, Amazon and Reliance, both in the same week, right? So if both of these sharks are entering the oceans, then there is some blood, right? We are already seeing a big disruption of the traditional healthcare sector model, right? So what I'm trying to say with this argument is to say that it is not only technology transformation that is happening. The government is actively building a public digital infrastructure. And because of the government building this digital infrastructure, we are seeing a disruption in a sector which we thought was very clearly physical and brick and mortar, right? Healthcare industry. We've not had a hospital chain scale across the whole length and breadth of India yet. But now we might see that because we are looking at a platform, right? Just the way Byju's was able to do what no physical school could do. This is why it is important to track technology policy. What was an announcement in the Red Fort on August 15th and what is a rollout in maybe 4 or 5 months from now could have been predicted easily 2 years ago. Let's imagine you are the person running a hospital chain. You could have seen the signs in 2018 because technology policy documents were being put out by the Indian government as early as Jan 2018. Right? So you would have had 2 years of foresight to prepare and be ready for this kind of a transformation if your organization had been tracking technology policy. Now, it's not only healthcare. We are looking at multiple more platforms like this that the Indian government is looking to build. They're planning to build an open credit network to make lending easier and overcome the cumbersome kind of paperwork and checks that a bank requires before lending happens. Multiple other kinds of platforms the Indian government is building. The key argument I wanted to make with both of these cases, right? Both with the case of the United Payments Interface, which revolutionized payments, and the case of the National Digital Health Mission, which is shifting healthcare fundamentally, is that if tracking technology policy gives us strategic foresight, it is not only tracking technology, it is not only tracking what the government is doing, it's tracking both at the same time. Both of them are reshaping markets at will, right? Suddenly markets are being closed. Paytm found itself kicked out of all Indian mobile phones because a US-based company said that, you know what, we'll pull you out of the app store, right? And markets are being closed again for platforms like PUBG on one night with an Indian government doing this. Markets are being opened overnight when the National Digital Health Mission goes live. There was no digital healthcare market at scale. Now you have every citizen of India on a common platform, just the way UPI brought everybody on a common platform, right? So technology policy gives you strategic foresight. How do we change? So this is something that I think has been spoken of in multiple places, but I think it's extremely important nevertheless. To stay on top of any of these transformations, we need to be learning about them ahead of time. If we had tracked National Digital Health Mission in 2018, we had 2 years as an organization to prepare, which is comfortable lead time compared to thousands of hospitals which would be disrupted at this point of time, right? So learning becomes a strategic investment, just the way we do other kinds of organizational investments. How much is our work enabling learning? It becomes a part of every person's work, right? It's not only an execution focus at this point of time. And fundamentally, what kind of learning are we talking about? One of them should be that we are tracking technology transformations. Careers and hiring have both become global. As we spoke about, the firm is unbundling. Now, it's not the software outsourcing game where we set up companies here, or the H-1B visa game where many people have to take visas and go and live with green cards in Silicon Valley. The game is that I can work in Coimbatore or Tenkasi and work for the best companies in the world. Now, what this means is that the market has become flat. I'm not hiring the best developer in Tenkasi. I'm not hiring the best guy in Coimbatore. I'm hiring the best guy worldwide. So if I'm in the 98th percentile or the 99th percentile, it would not make really too much of a difference as an employee who's trying to get a job, right? But at this point of time, when my competition is global and I can be hired from anywhere across the world, the difference between the 98th and 99th percentile is 10x. This reflects in salaries. Top developers get $1 million salaries, whereas an average salary of a developer in America is about $60,000, $70,000. Right? Similarly, across multiple other disciplines. So it's not only about being good enough for being in Coimbatore or good enough for South India or good enough for Bangalore, it's good enough for the world as an employee. So it's important to find a niche that puts us in the 99th percentile in whatever we do. 97 or 98 might not be good enough anymore. And this is true of technologically driven industries, but I'm sure in a matter of 5 to 7 years, most industries will face this one way or the other. Firms are also competing with recruiters worldwide, right? If I'm hiring in Coimbatore and other companies from across the world are hiring in Coimbatore, then I'm competing with recruiters worldwide. The opportunity is that we have the opportunity to hire talent globally as well. This is true only in certain roles at this point of time. It is more true in certain industries than others. But I see this to be a trend that is growing. This is the big opportunity since we are all located in India. This is the largest open market in the world as far as technology is concerned. China is blocked, America is saturated, EU is saturated. So can we build for the next billion? We've built for the first 30 million people, right? All software apps are for people who live in metros or people like us. But we have a bottom of the pyramid, which is vast as far as technology opportunity is concerned. What kind of applications or what kind of tech can we build for the next billion users in India? That's a vast untapped market. And if we build for the next billion in India, we have the opportunity to take that global. Right? The United Payments Interface, there's nothing like the UPI worldwide. No other government worldwide has it. Right? They're still stuck with RTGS and IMPS and all kinds of outdated transactions. Multiple governments across the Middle East are adopting India's United Payments Interface. Multiple governments in Southeast Asia are integrating with India's United Payments Interface. The United States Federal Reserve was actually looking at the UPI as a model for creating a similar platform for America. 5 years, 6 years later, after India has already deployed the platform, America will get something. We are ahead of the curve because for the first time, we did not follow what the West did. We didn't go the whole way saying, we'll actually build branches in every bank branches in every gaon, and then finally start giving accounts, and then finally give credit cards eventually, checkbooks and then credit cards, and then eventually move into digital banking. That would have taken us a 20-year trajectory. We leapfrogged because we realized every guy has a mobile phone in a family. So why didn't we just make the bank account live on the mobile phone and make payments instantaneous? Now we have a model which can be taken worldwide. Can we leverage similar unique opportunities that come from India's context, being the largest open market in the world, to build for the world? And can we do this while looking at the next century, not the next 2 years, not the next 5 years, but the next century? What is the long-term question on the horizon? For example, food, right? It's a big sector opening up at this point of time. When we are looking at the kind of global warming and climate change conventions being passed worldwide and the increasing pressure that is happening, the kind of agriculture that the West is doing is inherently unsustainable with mass scale agriculture. What is also happening is a huge movement towards vegan food, because non-vegetarian food of the kind which comes from industry farming of beef and other kinds of heavy water intensive animals is not sustainable anymore. So there's a huge movement towards vegan food, right? vegan food, vegetarian meats, and so on and so forth. Now, India has the largest variety of vegetarian cuisines worldwide. Can we actually look at this opportunity 10 years later and build industries around this? Right? If I think beyond my next quarter, think beyond my next year, we have huge global opportunities that leverage India's unique strengths. Right? It could become the food capital of the world if we actually take the efforts at this point of time. Similarly, along multiple sectors. And strangely enough, in a talk which sounds like a big rush saying everything is happening at this point of time, what is important is the infinite game. It's a fantastic book by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game. Fundamentally, it says that there are two kinds of games in the world, finite games and infinite games. Organizations which play finite games look at quarters or look at years, and they say that, I want to win and I want to be the first in my sector, or I want to be the best in my sector, and I want to win over other firms. Organizations which play the infinite game, in contrast, think of a 100-year margin or a 200-year margin, like Victorinox or multiple other organizations which have survived centuries. They don't play the game saying I play a quarter or I want to be I want to beat that guy in the market. They are playing by purpose and they play a marathon, right? So what we are saying is, if we are looking at this kind of a rapid transformation, organizations which are driven by purpose, look at a 10-year horizon or a 20-year horizon survive, whereas organizations which look at quarters will inevitably disrupt it. This is broadly what I wanted to share as in this talk, right? So this is the work I do. These are some glimpses from what I've shared in terms of talks or other consulting that I've done, right? So I do research focused on developing strategic insights for organizations. We coach executives on leading in a VUCA world. We consult with businesses to help them deal with change. We also work with the government in trying to shape technology policy. It's at a very nascent stage. So this is the sort of work that I do at this point of time. I mean, this is irrelevant, but yes. That's pretty much what I wanted to say. The takeaway message very simply would be that technology transformation is significant. It is real. It has been accelerated post the pandemic and it is not going to go back. It is not only companies that are building a convergence of disruptive technologies that are changing our social, political, and economic life. The governments are also actively building in this. And unless we track both technology and market and the governments, we will understand how markets are shifting. And tracking both of this is important to playing the infinite game. So, yeah, thank you. That's pretty much what I wanted to share. And if there are any questions.
Thank you, Shyam. That was a brilliant talk on tech trends and need of the tech today. Tech indeed can take us places, and with support from young guns like you. Thank you, Shyam. I now open the floor for question and answer session.
Yeah, Ramesh Vapna here. Shyam, great, fantastic. Very proud of you as one of my friends, Krishnakumar's son.
Then close the screen. Shyam,
sorry?
close it. Huh? Screen can be closed.
Yes.
Yeah. So really nice to see you in action. I've been meeting you, but the real knowledge sharing is only now with you. Great job. One question I have, like people like us, 60 plus, they are not very much exposed to technology. And any new technology that comes in is a big reservation we have in our mind, that how we are going to cope up to that. And that is really happening, that we are not really able to cope up to the latest trend and the technologies that are changing and the way things are going forward. So we feel the technology is overtaking us and we are getting outdated. So how do we cope up that?
No, it's a very genuine challenge, I think. And somewhere, from what I learned in my undergraduation to where technology has shifted in less than about 10 years, it's been incredibly fast, actually. So I think a lot of people definitely face this challenge. I have some suggestions, though. Maybe some of these might be useful. One definitely is that hiring younger people and giving them a lot more leeway in our organizations is something which really helps. Right? It may look like they're playing around with a lot of things, but they are technology natives and they'll be able to bring a lot of this into our work in some ways. Right? That is one thing.
But we are not. we are not really able to make out whether they are taking us for a ride or are they really working seriously about it.
Yeah.
Because we are not exposed to that, what they are really doing. We just have to believe what they say.
Yeah, I can genuinely imagine the challenge, but yeah, I think somewhere this is one possibility I can think of, but I do not really have an answer for this beyond.
Because we never had computers in our college. Even when we graduated out, computers were not there. Computers came after we graduated. So we are not even exposed to how to operate a computer or start a computer even.
In fact,
Of course, down the line we have learned little, but not to the extent that things have been changing.
so I think two parts to what I can suggest is, one is definitely that this is a huge open market. It is not only you, sir. I think I've heard this from multiple people where I've given talks, and it's a very, very fair thing because there are people who have built and led extremely successful organizations, and this is something which is very new. So I think even if one of the things that some of my colleagues were also exploring was, can we actually build a service which will give strategic insights on technology for people who are running small SMEs and who are, to help them keep on track of technology trends. That is,
that'd be great. I think that's got a great market too.
Yeah. So the other thing is, I think even if we don't have to use technology, right? For example, we don't have to use PhonePe or GPay. That's not really the problem. But I think it's important to understand what is really happening in the market and what this can do for us. That would actually be a sufficient knowledge to take operational decisions based on, even if we are not actually playing with each of these technologies.
Because we employ people even to transfer funds, and we have to give our password and code words, and there's always a fear that it can be misused.
Yeah.
That leads to sleepless nights sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, Vidya.
Okay, I'm Dr. Prakash here. Congratulations for the excellent talk. The answer for Ramesh question is update yourself. Change yourself. Change is constant. Unless you change, nothing can be done. At least you spend half the time which you spend on WhatsApp of different nature, you will learn a lot of things. Anyway, coming to the speaker, I have a query. You said so many things. I'll take a small part of that. Work from home. This work from home for the last 6 months, we have been experiencing as a doctor, we're getting quite a few patients coming with a lot of problems. The companies are happy because they can save a lot of money. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it does affect the health. I'll tell you what are the problems. Definitely, in the working from home, the atmosphere is not good. The hospital, in the office is good. Once they go into the mood of the working, then they'll work. At home, there's a disturbance from the family. There's disturbance in the environment. There's disturbance from the noise, and so on and so forth. Number one. Number two, the furnitures, which you're using in the house is not at all conducive to work. So they get a lot of orthopedic problems. Number three, there's no peace of mind. In the office, you are in a different environment. Your friend is there. You can spend time with them. You can relax in between. At home, you cannot do that. Number four, you are always there. So your boss knows that you are there already. So he keeps disturbing you. This is a big havoc as long as the working from home is concerned. And number five, coming to the working from home from the teachers, it's really disgusting. The teachers are really put into a lot of strain because they have to control these children and somebody is watching you how you are controlling. So, though it is good, it looks very rosy, but in the long term, there's a lot of problem as long as this sector alone is concerned. So, what is your reply for that? Thank you.
Absolutely, doctor. I think you're fully right, in the sense that 6 months of working on a laptop for about 8 hours and then socializing on a laptop has left all of us exhausted. It has not worked in the sense of constant distractions. It has not worked in the sense of interruptions or everybody thinking you're available at 10:30. I'm getting meeting invites for 10:30 p.m. as a very normal thing these days. I don't understand when it became a normal to call somebody for a call at 10:30 and expect them to work on, right? So that's a lot of challenges that we are facing. I think long run, we are not going to see only a work from home environment where for years employees work from home. It doesn't work, and it doesn't foster an organizational culture also, right? There is no commitment to an organization unless you physically interact and engage with the team. What is actually happening is a lot of people are trying something in between. They're saying instead of having a mega campus or 40,000 people in the case of technology companies, or 3,000, 2,000 people, they're bringing up smaller office spaces, let's say with about 100 seats. So we're still going to an office, maybe 2 kilometers away from where you live, still gets you away from distractions, but it gives you a focused environment. It's a little more physical than purely digital, but it's not the centralized office that makes us travel 20 kilometers across the city to actually engage. And maybe 3 days a week and not 6 days a week. So these people are actually coming to a middle ground between working completely remote and completely in person. I think this is still evolving. And as you very rightly pointed out, not all of this is rosy actually. This is what is happening. And I think I have a tendency to look at what is the possibility. But I think there is a lot of challenge that is coming in. When you speak about furniture and, for example, carpal tunnel syndrome and other kinds of things that are happening, it's quite real actually. Many of my colleagues face similar challenges. So absolutely.
The hallmark is depression. A lot of people come with depression. And number two, the another point is to give a little more information. Even in the health sector, the concept of building a big hospital, slowly it will come down, because now there are few companies in India who's doing the selective, like diagnosis-oriented clinics. Suppose you have piles, you can even now you can put it piles treatment. It will show a number of hospitals, and there's a people working for that. They talk like doctors just click them. They talk like doctors. Then they direct you to the hospital, which are existing. So these things are coming up. Piles clinic or circumcision clinic or delivery clinic. You just put it on. It will show a number of hospitals in different cities. It asks which city you want. What's the range of expenses how much you can spend. So all these are coming up in health sector also. Thank you.
Shyam,
Prakash, as far as the work from home is concerned, it will vary from one field to another. And even in a field, it will vary from one segment to another. For example, what we are doing in Shankara, we realize that the technical people have to be the frontline workers, they have to be there, whereas the administrative people, at least 60% of them, they don't have to crowd over there and they can work from home, especially in these last 6 months. But then they do two things. One is they're not crowding up in the hospital. The hospital has those people who deliver the service, the frontline workers, the technical people. And non-technical people don't come and crowd there. At the same time, they work from home, and it was very productive as well for them. So there are plus and minuses. We need to actually judiciously take what is good for us.
Thank you.
Shyam, Vidyashankar here. Okay, firstly, you were absolutely brilliant and you came across as an intellectual par excellence. Okay, one. Okay. And I think in just about 20 minutes, you convinced everybody here that they'll have to get back to their board meetings and hire you next week. Okay, otherwise, they perish. Good job. Okay. Now, two things. I want to pick your brain on technology vis-a-vis privacy concerns, technology vis-a-vis ethics. Now, what's your take on those two issues? I just want to pick your brain and then hear from you.
Absolutely a central issues, and thank you for bringing that up. Actually, I think that's the core conversation that is happening at this point of time, right? If some of us have Netflix, there is a fantastic documentary called The Social Dilemma, right? It brings this question very clearly to the center, right? What are these guys optimizing for when they build technology, right? A lot of apps, if you look at it, it has a scroll down, right? And if you scroll down, it jumps up. It tries to give the exact flavor of a slot machine, right? If you put this coin and you pull this and then you win, right? The American slot machines. That's exactly how they've designed technology, so that you get this feeling that you've gambled and you've won a reward. Or if you go to Paytm or whatever, you get a scratch card at the end of making a payment, right? That is again the whole kind of gamification and the lotterification of apps, right? They're trying to take over or hijack, what do you say, hijack addictive pathways in our new and create addictive pathways for us, short circuit our neural impulses very fundamentally, right? Because the measure of technology in many cases is stickiness. How long is the user stuck to your app, literally, right? And apps which are designed to increase stickiness are rewarded, right? Developers are rewarded on this basis in organizations. Now the metric itself becomes very fundamentally a problematic metric, because, well, if you're designing the apps in a way that everybody becomes addicted, well, that's not really great for society fundamentally, right? So ethics becomes extremely central when we think of many of these questions, right? Which is why the whole laissez-faire approach, where we thought that, technology is just good and let these startups innovate and let's build great products and they're getting free benefits, is no longer true anymore. Privacy again is a very central concern, right? When we see an ad follow us, for example, if I mention Swiss knives and Victorinox, I'm pretty sure all my devices across the next 3 days are going to give me those ads, right? Now you have basically devices that are overhearing you all the time, and you have a very hazy network of ad exchanges which keep selling your data across each other, right? How would a Facebook know what I'm talking on in a Zoom call with my, let's say, my Android phone listening? So Google is listening. Now Google is actually optimizing ads across the internet, right? And this data is sold across an ad exchange, which is behind the scenes, to another ad provider, and that ad provider targets you back, right? So as an end user, I have no say in where my data or my personal preferences are being circulated across the internet. And that's just the beginning of things, right? For example, if we do national digital health and we say that every user's health records will actually be available on a single platform, which is what the Indian government is gunning for in the next year, then what happens to privacy and security of that data? It's not only with regard to corporations and ads, right? It is also more sensitive data than that, which is actually becoming digitized. Which is why I think most conversations around technology have become absolutely focused on ethics and privacy. And a lot of corporations are facing the heat from civil society organizations. This is broadly the take. I also think there is a huge possibility for taking an Indian ethical approach to technology. Like just the way they think of ethics of technology, you can talk of a dharma of technology as well. And that would give us very different ways to think about these questions.
Shyam, Bharat here.
Yeah.
Absolutely stimulating talk, Shyam. Really enjoyed it. I picked out one sentence of yours which seemed very relevant to me. It says, the rate of change of your thought must be far greater than the rate of change at which technology is changing. And that is the defining factor for success in the future. My question is that there's a lot of information explosion today. You have gigabytes and terabytes of information thrown into the system every day. How do you intelligently read so you know what is relevant and what will take you forward and not get mired in this whole system of information explosion?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a challenge that all of us are actually facing. I face it personally as well. So what I've personally done in my case is I've cut down all kinds of information flows which are irrelevant to me. Like, for example, social media is out. WhatsApp is something, any group on WhatsApp, I will not be visible to me or does not get a response. Very simply because just the way there is cognitive fatigue, right? If I see 1,000 pieces of information in a day, there'll be very, very little that I can actively process and actually begin to see trends. And my job is to see technology trends. If I get distracted by all of this, my foresight is off. So one thing I do is I cut off all kinds of information sources because there is only limited cognitive capability to process. The second thing I find is there is excellent curation in each domain that is happening at this point of time. In response to the exact same question that you raised, right? A lot of people are actually putting together things like weekly newsletters, fortnightly roundups. There's excellent app called FinShots for like people who have no understanding of finances like me to keep a track of what is really happening, right? So what I'm trying to say is as information becomes cheap, curation becomes valuable. And people who are actually involving in curation are creating value addition. So, and this is happening in the form of podcasts, in the form of newsletters, where the content is much deeper than the news bite or even, following a newspaper. Right. So I choose podcasts and newsletters and sector-specific, information tools, maybe 6 or 7 of them, and rely upon them blindly to make a move. Because then there is no clutter. Whatever they bring about is curated out of 20,000 pieces of information that flood me in a week, and I can go deeper into any one of them that I want to. That's been my personal strategy. Maybe some of that would help.
Thank you.
Shyam,
Yes.
yeah, this is Damodaran.
Yes, sir.
Shyam, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, actually, I mean, it was wonderful. Really, actually, you took us. I mean, within 20 minutes, you made us to understand the reality. And just I would like to share my this thing here, as Ramesh touched upon. And see, particularly we entrepreneurs in India, especially in South India, particularly in Coimbatore, as we all know, we are all very conservative, and it is like I mean, we can say that we are German doing business, means family-owned business, and very conservatively we are all doing in one particular. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So now the thing is, actually, we are, see, we are, I mean, everyone are able to do something, I mean, innovatively in our own fields. But the technology, what you are talking about, is something totally different for all of us. Here, the one thing you told, or I understand, is that we can hire people like you referred. But without knowing the technology, I mean, in a better way, is it advisable to hire just people to get into this field and do it in a different way? See, I mean, very frankly speaking, as Ramesh mentioned, we do not have much knowledge about the technology, but we understand that that is the ultimate way to lead the market. So, is it advisable to venture into a technology-based business just on hiring people like technology known this thing? I mean, so is it advisable, and will it be what do you say?
Yes,
A
sir.
look or a successful model?
Got it. Yeah, I think that's a very valid concern, sir, because a lot of organizations face this, right? And I think the answer somewhere also lies in the beginning of how you frame the question. When you're saying that it's an intergenerational family enterprise that we're talking about, I think a lot of the succeeding generations are also people we can, you know, rely upon to some extent to take forward some of these initiatives. Structurally, one way to do it is to definitely not hand over reins to a new bunch of people who are hired and expect them to drive the organization. It simply would not work. Or there's not enough trust bases also to make such a leap. But I think one nice way that I listened to an excellent talk by the founder and CEO of Govtech, C.K. Ranganathan, on how he enabled a digital transformation within his organization in about 2 years. So what he actually did was he hired a bunch of 5 really smart kids from NITs and so on, electronics and computer science, and put them across different parts of his manufacturing and different parts of his, from manufacturing right up to distribution, interning for a month across each of these. So about 5 to 6 months, they were just spending watching, observing, training, and understanding the organizational process. And post that, he gave them another 6 months to actually pick up whatever courses they wanted to online, like Coursera, edX, anything that they wanted to subscription, Govtech would pay for. It's a very small team, right? For Govtech's size of 2,000, 3,000 people, 5 employees for 11 months, and these subscriptions were not too much of an R&D cost. But once this ramp up was done, then for the next 4 to 5 months, they were asked to come up with innovations across any one of these sectors that they chose. In terms of what he wanted to do was robotic process automation. He wanted to automate his supply lines, right? So he actually asked them to come up with prototypes and models. Now that you understand the process, and now you picked up whatever trainings you want to, build small prototypes of small increments across all of these spaces, right? And then, since it's anywhere a prototype which can be tested and checked, and it's not really into your production process, it is parallel to the way your organization functions. But at one point where you think there is enough stability, you can integrate it. So that way you are actually allowing people the creative freedom to do R&D and trusting young guns, but not giving them operational control of your core business. So I found his model to be a very practical way in which a SMB or a homegrown business like with based out of Tamil Nadu could actually do top cutting edge innovation. They've managed to, I think, as far as their distributions is concerned, I think they've shifted from a distribution of around 5 days to about a few hours in terms of moving the chains. I think, and in terms of even the production process, they were able to shave off half a day here and there, which I thought was pretty significant in 2 years. With just 5 undergraduates who were really smart who were hired. So that could be a possible model.
Thank you.
Shyam, this is Balasundram here.
Yes, sir.
This remembers about Toyota's innovation on Lexus model. Before they come into the market, they send their executives to US with tons of money just to spend a luxury life for 6 months to see what luxury is. Then come back and design the car.
Oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah, that is how they did it, actually. And your lecture reminded me of the book called Future Shock. It is absolutely is happening. What was predicted or been tougher is happening now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what Ramesh and Damu was worrying about, the knowing the technology, I think we should also have to keep learning ourselves every weekly, at least some time with experts, something on the system, something on the internet, and something what to search and what not to search, how to get the guidance. Many people don't even know the computer knowledge, so they have to put on their hands by themselves. There's nothing going to wrong. You can keep trying, and finally you end up. I have no experience in computer, but I can prepare a PowerPoint presentation now because of requirement and demand. The same way people are, put your hands on and keep working. Then if you are employing somebody technically highly skilled for your job, you should also know some bit of it, actually. Otherwise, it will be, you don't know what is happening, actually. You're out of track. But today is a brilliant lecture. Same as, I could rewind what you did in CMA. It's also wonderful. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Just supplementing what Balu was saying, see, I think as lawyers, we are the last to adapt to technology. Okay? Judiciary and lawyers are practically, averse even to technology. But then today we have, last week we were having a cross-border hearing. The hearing was taking place at Singapore. The parties were sitting in Thailand and India. Counsels from UK were engaged, and even witness cross-examination was going on. And the integrity of the examination also was preserved because of the kind of cameras that were on and the kind of technology that is there. So even lawyers have started adapting to technology. So industry people can't even say that, no, I have difficulty learning, because people who refuse to learn, lawyers are adapting to it.
Absolutely. I think, and definitely I would second what Balu sir said and what you're saying as well, that I think there's no way to but to follow and keep on top of tech trends.
I think the basic technology is fine, but when you go to real implementation and advanced level, it becomes Greek and Latin for us. And learning Greek and Latin right from ABC is very difficult.
Why are you learning? That is why you need to engage Shyam.
That's the right.
That is a good one. That's a good one.
That's lawyer's verdict.
Ramesh,
Shyam, hearty congratulations.
if I can hear.
Congratulations, Shyam. You just proved that you are the chip of the not so old blocks. And I'm sure Krishnakumar and Sandhya will be so happy. You have blossomed so well, and all of us are very happy. It was one of the best talks I heard recently, for that matter. All the best.
Thank you.
Just to quote, we have been going through a meditation course. This is the 5th week. Myself, SVB sir, Dr. Ramani, Balu, Bharat, a lot of our Rotarians are there. And we have about 400 plus people coming to the meditation course on Zoom every day morning. And we have been able to drive through things very well. The meditation goes on very well, but what you miss is the personal touch, where you gather together and have that satsang kind of meditation is not there. But we call it as a satsang because there are so many people in the Zoom, but the physical presence of people is something where we really miss. Of course, it's helping us. It's not that it's not helping, but still that the personal requirement which is there is not getting fulfilled.
It is adaptability and new way of living, Ramesh.
Yeah. That's true, but as I told you, we are all 60 plus.
No, but actually this is fascinating because what is happening is that online is becoming commoditized. So, somebody will offer a free online course for 500 people at 500 rupees, but if you want in-person interaction, that becomes premium, right?
Yeah, true.
So that's
true.
In fact, because of online, we are doing many things, wonders without, if this is not online is not available, COVID is not there, we would not have done so many things.
Yeah, true.
Health-wise and
we have meditators from UK, US, Singapore, Thailand, various places throughout the world coming at the same time, which would have been impossible rather.
So many things. We can see his younger brother behind him.
Yeah.
And many of us would agree that Ramesh's thinking is like a 20-year-old teen, and there is no reason why he should complain that he is very old. And all his WhatsApp messages will vouchsafe this fact.
With the white beard also? Great, it was fantastic.
Awesome, sir. Thank you, Shyam. It was a great talk.
The session was as great as an IIM class. Ramesh sir.
Yeah, true, exactly.
The quality was so good.
Too good, no doubt. And it's given us a lot of insight how we should take things forward.
Yeah.
A lot of question marks which are there in the mind are getting cleared.
Now I request Rotarian Jagan Mohan to propose vote of thanks, please.
Yeah. Very good afternoon to all. It was an amazing presentation by our ANAT, Shyam Krishnakumar, touching various key aspects regarding latest changes happening in social, economic, and political trends due to the use of latest digital technology in the whole world and also in our country within a very short span due to the present situation. It is an eye-opener to all to adopt to the use of latest technology so as to be more competitive globally in all fields and thereby reducing the operating cost also. It is happy to note that having associated with key Indian think tanks, you have acquired wide knowledge for formulating new laws and policies for the foreign companies to set up shops in India, which will immensely boost our country's economy. We wish all to achieve more laurels in the coming years. I thank all attending the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Shyam, once again. 12th meeting of Rotary Coimbatore Central adjourned.
Ramesh.
Yeah.
I've got a plan for you. You're bothered about your staff may cheat you and all, no? So,